Welcome to another episode. I'm so happy to be here with you today on the Sacred Fame Podcast. My name is Kasia Rachfall. I'm your host. And today I wanted to talk about what does it mean to do your work? Because you might have heard that term thrown around. If you do your work, I'm doing my work, or so-and-so isn't doing their work. I wanted to break down how I see it. What does that even mean? And of course, mine is only one perspective, but I would love to share some points with you about what I believe doing the work is. And you can tell me, do you agree? Do you disagree? What does it mean to you to do your work? So I've got a few things that I believe when we do our work, we become aware of. And this is how we do it. So number one, you practice what you know. I don't know about you, but I have definitely been in a place where I have read the books or I have taken the courses. I've gotten the materials, and then I thought, okay, well, I've done the work. I've read the thing and I feel really good inside, and I put it on the shelf, and then, a little while later, I'm like, I must have done something wrong because I don't feel the way I did when I finished that course, or I went to that conference, or I read that book. And it's because knowing and doing are two very different things, right? So once we know something, we need to practice it consistently, not just trust that our mind has the information, so we're good. We're going to put it on the shelf and just, hang out. No, we need to practice what we know, because otherwise it just becomes book knowledge. So that's number one. Number two, really experiencing life, all of it. What does that mean? Well, when you have a triumph, celebrate. When you make a mistake, get back up and learn from it. When you fall, right, or you fail, if you want to use that word, same thing, learn from it and get back up and do the next thing. Whether it's trying the same thing again, if you believe in it, if you know it's meant to work and it's meant to be, keep trying. Or change something and keep trying, right? Keep going in the direction that you want to go in, no matter what happens. I used to think, and this is kind of funny, but I used to believe this, that life should just be bliss all the time. And if I wasn't happy, I was doing something wrong. And then several wise people, in fact, shared with me that life is actually one big long experience. And we definitely have pockets of happiness and joy, but we can't expect it to always be that way. And that was news to me. But when I heard that, it kind of made sense and it took the pressure off. So if you allow yourself to experience all of life, the pitfalls, the highs, the lows, the fails, the mistakes, the triumphs, right? You're doing your work. Having expectations that things should be a certain way all the time, not realistic. So let me know, how does that one land for you? When we experience life, we also have to give others permission to experience life. And this one's hard, because sometimes, often in fact, it's so much easier to see in other people where they could perhaps tweak or pivot or change something so that their life or their work might become easier, right? It's easier to see in others where we think change needs to happen than it is to see that in ourselves. And the same goes for other people. Not everybody sees where they need to create change. And when we are attached to another person's experience, that means we want the change more for them than they want it for themselves. And that is a recipe for disaster. We will be disappointed. Not with everyone, not always, right? Sometimes some people are very open to being being given feedback about where they can create change. I have that type of a relationship with several of my friends where we have this understanding that it's like, if you see me doing something that I could change, please tell me, right? Call me out on it. And I'm okay with that when it comes from these certain people. But not everybody has that agreement. And so sometimes we need to bang our head against the wall a little while before we realize, wait a minute, maybe I should try something different. So being attached to another person's experience and wanting them to change more than they want to change, so it doesn't work. And so doing the work means you give yourself permission to have your own experience, and then you give others the permission to have their experience, even if that means you have to step back from that relationship, even if that means you maybe see them less or not at all, right? Doing the work means you honor your experience and theirs. So yeah, expanding, evolving all the time means you take in new knowledge, but you don't necessarily hold on to knowledge that you knew at one point that perhaps has either outlived its usefulness, or you've learned something new, a different version, something that rings more true to you. We are always evolving and expanding. We have that growth mindset. It means you're doing your work. A big important one is you're not just digging in your shadow. Again, learned this the hard way. When I first started on my spiritual journey, I thought, okay, I have all these tools. At this point, I had taken my neurolinguistic programming practitioner and master practitioner. I was waiting for trainer's training to come around. And I was like, I have these awesome tools. I'm going to dive into myself and get rid of all my limiting beliefs, all my limiting decisions, every pain that I have, all the shame, everything. I'm just going to do that. That's going to be my focus. And so I looked at myself and constantly looked for things that I thought were wrong or that were issues or problems, and I would work on them. Now, the problem with doing it that way is you become a really miserable person. It's like you become obsessed with fixing yourself because you believe you're broken. I definitely believed that. I don't know if you've ever believed that. Not a happy place to be. So, not just digging in your shadow means you acknowledge that there are probably things inside me, limiting beliefs, limiting decisions, perhaps shame or anger or whatever other emotions, right, that may come up. But I'm not going to go looking for them. I'm going to live my life, do my business, go to my work, whatever your situation. And when something comes up, then I will face it. So rather than like picking up a shovel and diving down the rabbit hole to dig up all the roots of all the things that need to be fixed, you adopt this mindset that you actually aren't broken. There's nothing to fix. You are okay. And as you live your life, as stuff comes up, you will face it. You don't need to dive down the shadow rabbit hole. The shadow will come up. Especially, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but when you set a goal, whether it's a big goal or a little goal, or you have a desire, often what will happen is when you say, okay, I'm going to do this thing, or I want this thing, I'm going to move in that direction, something activates all the resistance all of a sudden, right? And you are faced with your fears, your limiting beliefs, all those things. So it's a beautiful mechanism. And all we need to do is simply live our life, have that experience, right? Have our own experience so that when we activate the shadow, we can simply face it. So big one, not just digging in the shadow unless you're focused on a particular challenge and then, of course, facing it, doing the healing work or whatever, but allowing yourself to live, to work, to have fun, to play, to have relationships without believing that you're broken. I call that facing the light, because when you're just looking for shadow, you can get really stuck. Like I said, you become miserable. I did. When you face your light, which is my next point, the shadow will show itself. It will absolutely show itself. Now, facing the light is not always easy, because it means that you have to look at where you are brilliant, where you are already excellent, how you are shining in the world. It's like you really have to see and hear yourself for who you are and acknowledge the fact that you are an expert in whatever field, wherever you focused and perhaps had education or training, you are an expert in that. That's facing your light. It's not always easy because, bragging or feeling proud of ourselves isn't always something that is looked favorably upon. It's frowned upon, actually, in our culture here. But if you can't see your own light, no one else can see it either. So facing your light means acknowledging yourself for your triumphs, for your expertise, claiming that for yourself, seeing and hearing yourself for who you are, so that others can see you and hear you. That is the essence of sacred fame, right? Is being fully seen and fully heard for your gifts in the world. But first, in order to do that, you have to acknowledge your gifts. You have to realize that, wow, maybe I'm an intuitive, or maybe I'm psychic, or I have a gift for healing, or I have a gift of speaking or writing or expression in some way, or art, creativity. Until you embrace that, and nurture it and shine your light through it, it'll never grow, right? So facing your light is so important. It's probably more important than always looking for your shadow, because like I said, your shadow will get activated and it'll come up. Don't worry, it'll find you. It will find you. So the next point is celebrating. I think I mentioned it briefly in the beginning, but I want it to be a point in and of itself. When you reach a goal or you achieve a dream, do you pause and celebrate? Do you give yourself permission to sit still and even, gather with those you love and look at what you achieved and feel good about it and celebrate it? Really claim that triumph. Again, this isn't natural for all of us, but it's so necessary because it becomes like a marker for you. It becomes an anchor of success. And you can, as you're feeling that success, as you're talking about it, as you're receiving praise or accolades or renown for that success, you can see, how does this feel? Does this feel meaningful to me? Or does it feel empty? Or how does it feel? Do I like this success? Knowing what your own success feels like means you can define how the pursuit of it, so you know when you have it. But if you never celebrate and you always just keep running to the next thing, it always feels like something's missing. So that pause to celebrate is really, really important. So I hope you do that. I'm learning how to do that. I'm getting better at it. Next point is growing compassion and humility. This one, it's I don't even know if I can articulate it fully, because it's something that each of us has an individual journey, especially when we're at the beginning of a journey and we're learning all the things and we believe that we're finding all the answers. And I don't know about you, but perhaps you've even found yourself going like, oh yeah, I totally have the answer. If you just do this, this, and this, everything will be great. And so that we become these advice givers because we think we know everything, because we're trying to help ourselves. Maybe not everything, but we know a lot because we're studying or we're training. Definitely felt that sometimes, especially after taking my NLP training, because it was so revolutionary for me. I thought everybody needs to know about this. And so I would just, offer advice and stuff. And I learned very quickly to let other people have their own experience. It's like I said, I already talked about that point. And so being able to grow in that humility that, yes, I may know a lot about this one particular subject and it's helped me a lot, but that doesn't mean it's the answer to everything for everyone. So being humble enough to know that you know, but not spewing it at everybody, right? Then you're doing your work, because you can accept that not everybody wants to hear what you have to say. And then, of course, compassion for yourself and for others. That goes back to that idea of allowing yourself to have your own experience, allowing others to have theirs. and really holding yourself in that loving, compassionate place of, it's okay if you screw up. It's okay if you fall. It's okay if so-and-so over there falls down, and then maybe you can extend a hand to help them get back up, and ask for help so that you can get back up. So that compassion is such an important piece. The more you have it, the more you practice it, the more you know you are doing your work. Changing perspective. I think, again, I touched on this, but it's so important. Being open to different points of view, being open to new learnings, new teachings, the evolution of information, the evolution of the universe. And especially on a spiritual path, there has been so much dogma out there. And it's very much entrenched in some teachings, but then there's new teachings coming out that are more loose, more less entrenched with duality, more unity based, and opening up to those perspectives, being willing to change what you know, being willing to embrace something new. So again, that growth mindset, being open, so important, right? Not just thinking that because you've done this training or that training, or you've healed yourself in this way, that is the end all be all. It likely isn't. It was for you, but it's not for everybody. And so being open to the way other people think is being open to the way other people think without judgment. It takes so much practice. Oh my gosh, I'm practicing that all the time. You're doing your work when you can sit with someone who has a completely different perspective than you, and you could have a healthy debate or a healthy discourse with them, but without that judgment, or without slinging around, names and things and putting their ideas down because you think you know better. Then you're doing your work. Another really big one is boundaries. Boundaries. That means boundaries that you put up, or you take down, or you change. It means you don't allow others to treat you the way you don't want to be treated. You don't treat others the way that they don't want to be treated, right? You respect boundaries. It doesn't mean, and I read this quote once, I'm going to paraphrase, but it said, boundaries are not barbed wire fences. They can be love and compassion. And I love that, because when I first was learning about how to put up boundaries, they were very rigid and stiff. And I was like, don't you dare cross my boundary, Since then, I've been able to relax a little bit, and I still have firm boundaries around certain things, but I don't have to throw barbed wire around them, right? I can be a little more eloquent, a little more compassionate when I enforce them. Not always, it doesn't always work. Sometimes we all lose our temper, or we say the wrong thing. But we keep practicing. But boundaries, when you have boundaries, when you know what you want and don't want, then you're doing your work. And then the last one I just want to reiterate, because this one is so important, is not just having the book knowledge, but actually implementing what you know. There's a proverb that I heard, and it says, to know and not do is to not know. To know and not do is to not know. And boy, I can tell you that is so true, because I've experienced this in my own life through myself, and I have met people who have all the book knowledge. They've read every book on a subject, or taken classes, and broken things down, and they know the subject, but they haven't put it into practice. They haven't implemented what they know. And it shows, because there's a certain rigidness about their knowledge. There's a lack of compassion, a lack of humility, a lack of openness. And that just comes with practice, right? Obviously, you got to start with book knowledge, but then be willing to implement it, be willing to do something with it, so that you can continue to grow and be open and evolve and face your shadow and have your own experiences, right? So all of these points, all of them are combined. None of them can be in isolation. but that's what it means to me to do your work, is making sure you're doing all these things and probably even more. I'm sure there's more points. These are just the ones that came to mind for me as I was preparing for this episode. And I would love to hear from you. What do you think? How do you know that you are doing your work? How do you know that others are doing their work? It's such a fascinating topic to me. And I would love to hear from you. So you can leave me a comment or message and let me know what you think. So that's it for this one. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you next time.